Among men younger than 50, Israel's support was at a -3 level 4 years ago, and now is at a stunning -47.
As it turned out, we had about 500 people, which is pretty good, and a big showing.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. We'll start with some encouraging information. A CNN report found a huge swing in lack of support in the U.S. public for Israel. CNN's chief data analyst, Harry Denton, reported that among men younger than 50, Israel's support was at a -3 level 4 years ago, and now is at a stunning -47. Among all adults 4 years ago, it was +13 and now -23. Finally, the question, who do Americans sympathize with? 4 years ago, it was Israel by 28 points. Now Palestinians up by 11 points. I'm sure the senators in the U.S. are well appraised of this information, and it had a lot to do with the vote in the Senate this week, where 40 of 47 Democratic Party senators voted to deny Israel $600 billion in weapons and armored bulldozers. Unfortunately, Republicans voted in a bloc and the deal went through, but still, the number of Democrats willing to buck Israel is lots more now, and that's startling. Now this from the Jerusalem Post about a Jewish Electorate Institute poll about AIPAC, which, as you probably know, is a chief part of the Zionist lobby in the U.S. They talked to 800 U.S. Jews who had been selected randomly. The survey asked those who identified as Democrats whether an AIPAC endorsement of a candidate in a Democratic primary would make them more or less likely to support the candidate. Overall, 40% of Jewish Democrats said it would make them less likely to support the candidate, and only 13% said it would make them more likely to support the candidate. So Jews in the U.S. who identify as Democrats are similar to non-Jews in the U.S. and are divorcing themselves from the apartheid state. Hopefully, despite its billionaire class money, AIPAC is losing its influence. And this news about a long-gone Jewish anti-Zionist organization. It's by Molly Crabapple, and her book is called Here Where We Live Is Our Country. She learned Yiddish to research the story of the Bund, a Jewish working-class revolutionary group that specifically rejected the ideas of Zionism. Crabapple's book is just out and is already number 4 on the New York Times bestseller list. The news that a book celebrating anti-Zionism is a bestseller is a sea change. Would that all of the news be so good? Most of it, of course, is horrible. I'm going to read from a tweet from Pulitzer Prize-winning Gaza poet Mossab Abu Toha. He writes, "My great-aunt by marriage, Suad Khalil Abu Toha, was born in Jaffa in 1941. She is older than Israel and is older than 97% of the current members of Congress, the president, and his entire cabinet. For 78 years since 1948, Suad has lived in a refugee camp in Gaza City, my birthplace. She is now in the terminal stages of cancer. Doctors have informed her children, who are as old as most of the U.S. cabinet, that there is no hope. They have been told not to bring her to the hospital because there's nothing left to be done. Even basic palliative care is unavailable. Even pharmacies are empty. That's all because Israel has been systematically blocking cancer medications and essential treatments from entering Gaza. Suad is 60. Her 62-year-old son recently told me he cannot sleep because of her screams of agony. While Congress consistently finds bipartisan consensus to authorize shipments of offensive and defensive weaponry, what's the difference? To Israel, there's no such urgency for humanitarian aid. Now a short video from April 17th in New Haven, a march on Palestine Prisoners' Day.
Open up the prison doors! 5, 6, 7, 8! 5, 6, 7, 8! That's how we will liberate! That's how we will liberate! 1, 2, 3, 4! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Earlier this week, hundreds of American medical workers swarmed Congress in an effort to get them to notice what is happening to Palestinian medical workers. I interviewed Dr. Phil Brewer. It's April 16th, 2026. I'll be speaking to Phil Brewer, a retired emergency room physician at Yale New Haven Hospital. He's a longtime member of Jewish Voice for Peace and Healthcare Workers for Palestine and Doctors Against Genocide. He was in Washington, D.C. at an event organized by Doctors Against Genocide. Good morning.
Good morning, Stan.
So, what was the action called?
So this was a day of a combined day of a public demonstration against the genocide in Gaza, as well as the other genocides that are going on, and then followed by visits to legislative offices, both Senate and House, on Capitol Hill. This is something that Doctors Against Genocide, which we always call DAG, so I'll just say DAG. This is something that they've been doing since the beginning of the genocide, really. The first one was in, I think, November of 23, and there were only 4 of them, and they didn't really know what to do, but they quickly organized, and now every single month there are about 30 or 30, sometimes 40 members who convene in Washington and have arranged appointments with senator and representative staffs. Occasionally, we actually talk to the representatives. That's about a third of the time. Generally, never the senators. But we have ongoing relationships with their legislative aides, and they generally have somebody who has a combined position of defense and international relations. That is their portfolio. And
Tell
so
us about the demonstration first, if you would.
yeah.
How big was that?
So this month is International Genocide Awareness and Prevention Month, and that's because the 14th was the anniversary of the beginning of the Armenian genocide at the hands of the Turks. and it has since become spread out or diffused to all of the genocides. So we decided that this month we would have a public display, and it's because during a previous meeting with Jamie Raskin, when we presented our demands or our asks, he said, "Well, bring me 1,000 white coats to Washington, and then I can do something." And so that started the 1,000 White Coats in Washington Day, which was the official title of the event.
I see.
Um, as it turned out, we had about 500 people, which is pretty good, and, uh, and a big showing. So we convened at 9 o'clock in Union Station, where we organized the day, did a group picture, did a few chants until the security people came over and said we couldn't demonstrate inside there. And then we marched with our banners, including the banner which, two banners which you gave to me, calling for the liberation of Dr. Abu Safia. We marched over to a grassy area in front of the Capitol building, and had our rally. And at the rally, we had, I believe, 7 speakers, including Dr. Nidal Jabour and Dr. Karama Cummerly. They are the 2 co-founders of Doctors Against Genocide. They're both Palestinian American physicians. And they were followed by 3 different, 2 physicians and a nurse who, within the past 2 months, have been to Gaza on volunteer missions. And they gave their testimony basically to what they saw and what's going on. We also had Rashida Tlaib, the representative, who is one of the most supportive of Palestinian rights and of the movement to try to end the genocide. And then after that, we went to the Hill to our respective. We broke up into teams, and the teams went to their assigned appointments, and we presented our what we call leave behinds, basically handouts with general information about the group, but also the long list of specific things that we feel need to be legislatively attended to. And of course, that afternoon was the 4th in a series of Senate resolutions presented by Bernie Sanders to block further sales of some specific items, some specific weapons, including the 1,000-pound M108 bombs, the armored Caterpillar bulldozers that are actually weapons of war and of occupation. And on the first time around, there were 15 senators, all Democrats, who voted in favor of it. And the second time, I believe it was 27. And this time there were 40 senators who voted in favor. It didn't pass, but each time more and more Democratic senators have changed their vote and decided that indeed we need to quit shipping arms to Israel. And
I would
there's a
think that
strong, go ahead.
I would say in part, I think it's because they're reading the polls. There was a piece on CNN. I mean, it was staggering. The loss of support for Israel. First, they talked about young people, then all adult Americans, and so on. And from what had
Yeah,
been mild positives became huge negatives. And so politicians are aware of that, and I'm sure
yeah.
that had a lot to do with their changing opinions.
Well, even J Street is reading the polls because J Street J Street, and for perhaps the listeners who aren't familiar with it, it's what is often referred to as a liberal Zionist organization. They don't like the occupation, but they're not against Zionism. They don't see that as the root cause of what's going on. And so they've always been in favor of these arms transfers. But for the first time, they came down on our side. So even they're reading the polls. And clearly, public opinion has changed dramatically. But our governments, and that's not just in the United States, our governments have not caught up to the public opinion. And part
Yeah.
of that, a big part of that is the fact that they don't actually represent us. They represent their backers, and they don't consider the public to be their backers. The public is just the people that have to be fooled into voting for them so they can continue to defend the interests of their backers. But 40, I think there's hope, particularly if the Democrats get control of the Senate in the midterms. There is actually a possibility of the next one of these passing and obeying the law. It's against the law. There's a thing called the Leahy Amendment that's been a law for over 20 years now that says it is illegal for the United States to ship arms, to ship war material to countries who are committing gross violations of human rights.
Right.
Nobody, well, there are some people who can deny that Israel is doing that, but we know that they're not in touch with reality, or they're lying or whatever. But we know that Israel is committing genocide, which is the greatest violation of human rights. And so it's illegal for us to be shipping these arms. And in addition to illegal under American law, it's illegal under international law. Every legislator who votes in favor of those arms shipments, every legislator who yesterday voted against this resolution is committing, by that act, is committing genocide by complicity.
Mm.
They're never going to get arrested or indicted or go to trial. But, you know, even when a murderer doesn't get caught, they're still a murderer. And when somebody supports genocide, they're guilty of genocide, whether they ever get whether they ever have to pay for it in a court of law. And this is one of the points that I in particular emphasize in the meetings that we have. Um, there's
And we
a
should say,
handout.
we're recording this here in Connecticut. One of the seven who would not vote to end the arms shipments to Israel was Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal.
Yes, yeah.
Did people
Um,
go to his office? Did people try?
uh, we did. We that was our last call. We didn't have an appointment, but we I've been on at least 3 appointments with his legislative aides in his office, and it's very interesting because the first one, the person that they assigned to see us was clearly antagonistic and was wearing um, 2 lapel pins. On one side, he had a yellow ribbon, "Free the Israeli Hostages" lapel pin. And on the other side, he had a crossed US flag and Israeli flag.
Wow.
And afterwards, I sent a note to Senator Blumenthal, who I've known for a long time. I'm not, wouldn't say I'm friends with him, but he knows who I am because we've worked on issues way back when he was Attorney General. And I sent him a note and I said, you know, when I go to see my US Senator, I don't expect to be greeted by somebody who's wearing the flag of a foreign country on his lapel, without even saying Israel. And I didn't hear back from him about that. But that was the first meeting. But the second, third, and fourth meetings, there were a combination of three aides at those meetings, one of whom is former U.S. Navy intelligence officer, um, and she was actually she gave the frankest answers to questions of anybody we've ever seen. Because the problem with seeing the staffers is when you ask them a question, almost invariably the answer is, well, I can't speak for the senator or I can't speak for the representative.
Yeah.
And so you don't get an answer. And so our response to that always is, well, would you please pass that on to them, and in follow-up we will hope to get an answer, a direct answer to the question. Because the other thing that happens is they'll send you back a reply with referring to the question that you asked, and then there will be a 2 or 3 paragraph boilerplate
Right.
response that says nothing. So yeah, that's what's happened with Blumenthal. He is a devoted Zionist, and I can't really see anything any reason why he would change course.
How
Um,
about, so you say about 500 were at the demonstration, and I'm sure
yeah,
hundreds went into lobbying. Did you all get together afterwards to kind of compare
advocacy,
notes?
advocacy. We we're all careful about using the lobby word because that
Okay.
has tax implications.
All right. The
So we
advocacy.
yes, we call it advocacy, which is what it is. Um, we're certainly
So,
not paid to do this.
did you get together afterwards, compare notes, and were there any
Yeah.
surprises or good news?
The surprise was that we had a large turnout, that thanks to some really intense work by about 5 people who were organizing and who developed an app that we could all look on our phones, because the meeting schedule changed up to the last minute as we got new representatives or senators accepting meetings and so forth. Um, and so we were very pleased about the organization, about the rally slash press conference. Um, as sort of expected, we really reached out to lots of media outlets, to get them to cover this. And in the end, there were only 4. There were no major American ones. TRT, which is the Turkish uh, uh, channel, and actually their reporting is quite good. They were there. Al Jazeera covered it. Um, the International Photographers Association sent
Hmm.
somebody to cover it. Um, and so there will be some. We also were hoping that Democracy Now would cover it, but they didn't. And I sort of explained to people, here in Washington, there are groups like ours, not the same cause, but you know, volunteer groups who have a cause, who do this all the time. And so, from their standpoint, what we're doing today is not really news. So I kind of get that. But by having it on TRT and Al Jazeera, one of the very important things is that people back in Gaza and the West Bank and in East Jerusalem will see the coverage of this on Al Jazeera, on TRT. And we had quite a few people tell us that they are very encouraged when they see, um, for instance, the events at the Palestine Museum, to the extent that that gets back to Palestine. It gives people hope, and it lets them know that they're not forgotten, and that's one of the big purposes of doing this.
I understand that one of the speakers at the rally was from the National Nurses United. I would think that's big news, an important
That
labor
is
union.
Yes, that's a very important labor union. I have to say that that's my favorite labor union. They're very dynamic.
Greenpeace has issued a troubling report about Chernobyl. The notorious ruined and now closed nuclear power plant has been for several years covered over by an immense concrete and steel sarcophagus. That structure was supposed to last for 100 years, but its architects naturally didn't imagine it being attacked by a military. A drone, almost surely sent by Putin's forces, did major damage to the outer shell of the sarcophagus. Greenpeace warns that the structure still cannot fully seal in the radioactive wreckage beneath it. But to end on a high note, some photos of the orchid show at the New York Botanical Garden. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.